Saba, Janju Sim, Yamlin Chebalia, Saba, and Tiba Chawa, Nijeta, the Tiba Chawa, and the Tiba Shabadi, Yambo Topshukone, and Diva Shasu, Dikorma Shugorwa, and Zadakas Ganes Kinyama Kadashuvari Lamna, and Jeke, Leda Numo Wangi, Rawa Meba, Shiva di Leodu, and the Nigi Shiva di, and Ejike Sukangi Kya, and the Katuas Kaya Mares, Jeza, Deni, and Denigi Shivi, Je Negapti, and Nichinga Zuge, Rawa Meba Shia di Ligores, the Neleodu, and Jike. Shine Meva took Mevaza, and Dikaso, and the chicken Shitu Dunga, and Jike, that Jawa, Chika Susuki, that Mashivi Negala, Susu Nidoda, Susuki, that Yuchalada, then you did that is Pashan, Rose and Bigita, the Niganga, Semlia, then Jenada, and then Gambrada, then Ungores, or to send Ungores, and the name. And the Shini Meva to go Mare, Shivena, and the Kawaki lingers, and then Kiwal and Setela, and then Androlaki, and the Dendrolaki lingers. As a Suzuki Tipa, Top Chamber Sayo, and the Kiwachimanga Sonaki, Tinit, Ganga Tigres and Pegata, Dunga, the Ungores. Says I didn't do sometimes, that's also that the Mashipi, Devo Yubi, Neraptelia. And then I get your count to the true water, Truena, and Javachima, and Dendrolaki, Giadu, then Andrew Giadica, then Andrew give it to my new Moya Chagores, Xingadu, the Nezada, Gohabi Capilla, and Sosorama Yubi Capilla, and then get you to Gores, and do Shinema Tivache, Vaticina, 2 minutes in Bujavache, Mo Banana, Tawa in the Chigimes and Biggie, Thompson J, and Diringi. Give out the Gohabi Capilla, get your count to the 2 Gures, and be some Tajan Dustine, Jaware setting as kissing Digor Mashu Sarva.
Good evening. So we're continuing in the second chapter of the Engaging in Bodhisattvas Way of Life to look at the process, firstly, to accumulate, and now we're at the part of purification. And we need to accumulate virtue and purify non-virtue in order to develop our mind so as to generate bodhicitta. And so we are looking in terms of purification, at a presentation, an expansive presentation on the 4 opponent powers. What we looked at over the recent weeks is how we have no independence or freedom or control over our death or the rebirth that we will take. This is dictated by our karma, which is ripened by our afflictions. Recognizing this, recognizing that process, and that when our death comes, we'll leave behind all our loved ones, as well as our possessions that we've spent so long accumulating. But also recognizing that we do not become non-existent. Whilst we leave this behind, our mental continuum will continue, and we will take again rebirth, either in the high realms or low realms. There is no alternative to taking rebirth once again in the high realms, as in this life, or in the low realms. Recognizing this too adds to our determination that we must accumulate virtue and purify non-virtue, because this is the method so as to close the door to falling into the low realms in our future rebirth, and to ensuring that we take a good rebirth once again in the high realms and can continue our spiritual development. So in this particular section, we're looking at the opponent power of regret, regretting past non-virtue, past misdeeds, and committing to not engaging further misdeeds, but rather to strive to accumulate virtue.
That in mind, that's Suji Chikchin Dida Le Labor Gyobarchi Europe She and Geshe Thubten Rabten Choshir Gyapta Tsulorches.
Coming to the 45th verse, who can perfectly protect me from this terrifying danger, I exclaim. With panic-stricken, bulging eyes, I search all four directions for protecting refuge.
수시 직chen 디달레 레버르 교버르 지규르시에스다 당한 저기 베네 시로치리 갑라 데네레다 뇨모 라와메바마 시용도 다직나 시도부도 시위 지버틸레 안가 수교그레 셈비기 안직 도시네 나 마시 겹투 수지기리 셈비기 삼로치 용고로 와당아제 데네기 수지기리에서 제산 수식 직신 디달레 레버르 교버르 지규르시에스데 당한 마시로치도 레다 라와메바 시르도 당한 디주와 당한 시사랭아 맹가 지로제 같이 지로제세 지고로 왔는데 시루스 시나 중고로 데데 데네 시나도 안소소 안지 마디 치에들이야 수교그레 셈비기다 겹투 수교그레 셈비기 도시네 안두 삼 고고레 제레 직친 수지 직친 디달레 다 레버르 교버르 제버르
Looking at the first two lines, who can perfectly protect me from this terrifying danger, I exclaim. So this then, we imagine ourselves at the point of death or nearing our death, when fear at the ending of this life, where we have to leave behind all that we've worked so hard to achieve in terms of relationships and possessions. And now we see the end looming before us, and we search for protection. Who can protect us from this unwanted situation of death, our death that we have not chosen, but is being forced upon us by our karma and afflictions. And we turn towards medical practitioners, we'll turn wherever we can to try and seek protection from our impending death.
수지 지진 디달레 아니 수진 지진 딜레다 레버 교버 수지 교버 제규르시에세 양자 돈나다 시사웨나 시세네 미니마 직당 안솔 파이니와로 비케바이나 기연도 갑라 안델레야 소솔야 나와달 가용선 베 지금 소솔야 뇌베지 행기다 베직 제나 소고 데네기 안직 제 셈제 야나소 소솔야 강한 제겐 뇌베지겐지 데네기 나와 셔긴서와도 소솔야 데네사 냐와데 둥화용어자 둥화 제겐로시 니레 데네게 나와 샤용고래 데네 샤이비 갑라 안고 다 데네기 지거침보시나 강한 제겐 딜레 당아 수교고래 셈비게다 나디 안 수시 직신 샤나소 능알야 강한 제겐 샤나소 디달레 당할야 겹투거는 수요래 셈비게 두치네 바 안주 두치네 삼고고래 제리다.
Further way we can reflect on those first two lines is imagining, were we to take rebirth in the lower realms, then with panic-stricken eyes, we would appreciate this terrifying danger around us, perhaps of predators or other beings who want to cause us harm. Then we would search out someone to protect us.
수시 지신 디달레 레버 교버 지유르세세데 시위네 갑다 시차위게 메네 냐왈 계속 디레 니가레 자요 바시르바다.
So therefore, there are two ways that one relates to these two lines. In meditation, first meditating as if one is approaching the end of this life, and the fear that may well arise, and secondly, that the fear that will certainly arise should one take rebirth in the lower realms.
다 내내 연자다 두시네 아주 수교불에 샘비게 삼다이도 되네. 제시 템백이 미디에니 초실 잡다 초가지스. 지난 데네기 미니 다직 소설에 내비지간 샤나 서고 데네기도 마 수교불에 샘비게다 데네 교환 고구도 샘비게 삼다진 배 남자 제시 템바스 남자서 샤나 남자 예전에 배 미디기 파 첨보를 배 가지가 루신 되고 저다 최고를 잡 로봇인 잡도 최고를 제시 템비 미디에니 초실을 잡다 초하지 초가 지가라 따는 마들 대교관이 날 교로제스는 수교의 되게 파이 샤나 남자 계신 어디 되네 집어들은 교로제스는 파 직체네 초실 도시네 gyokhan sui gyopsare simbe gyokhan tsegu ore jere jisang choshir gyapda chowa jes.
The third and fourth line, with panic-stricken, bulging eyes, I search all directions for a protecting refuge. Here we can imagine that when fear arises through either having been reborn in the lower realms or facing imminent death, our fear is likely to be displayed such as in the third line, with panic-stricken, bulging eyes. And then we would search desperately in all four directions, searching everywhere for someone to come to our aid, someone to protect us from either our impending death or the terrifying rebirth we have taken.
choshir gyab me thone sin kola ro chigen gyab khen me badi ha go yodu ani dene kundu yimu kyursa semlia be kanga nyanga kanga siuli yore chile choshir gyab me thone ni da chiksaba di ho deji shishe sa din ma choshir gyab me thone ni ani ga sa dene kundu yimu kyursa de deji choshir gyab da chowar jelarwa gyab thogor bada kanga su gyokore simbe shena ngamda chen pa nga sui gyopse gyokhan suri pa tseyodu an choshi gyab meba thongwa de gyabkhan yoba di ma thongwa ji meba thongwa da gyokhan mindu sambege thongyodu ha goyodu ani delya ani dene kundu yimi kyo dene seme gyoba da nga pe kanga da duga nyongora sambege da semya yimu kanga shuli ge de chele ade choshi gyab me thone ne deda kundu yimu gyur tsingi tsitoza choshir gyabme thone ni dene kundu yimu gyur di mare di para kyo sikji chere da dene kundu yimu gyur dene ne gyabye mayina dese dage jidar cha sik jona sikdi chere dene kundu yimu kyursaya de. Che sa mere sa minde. Di lo yo mare ne dir kyabyo mai mai dene dage jidar ja se di singi de malo bare. Tangi chikalo sne choche kyemme thone ne dene kundu yimu kyursaya singi de dawo ni de lo sha le.
Just a bit of confusion because the order of the Tibetan in Geshe's book and mine is a little different, the order of the lines. So now moving to the next verse, the 46th verse. So I'll read the first two lines of the version Geshe has, which will slightly change on the board. So moving to the next verse, the next two lines. Seeing no protection in the four directions, my mind will become overwhelmed with despair. So here we, in our meditation, we're imagining ourselves in one of the two scenarios of either our impending death or having been born in the lower realms. And there one now is searching for someone to come to one's protection, someone who can aid one in one's time of desperation, but finding no one. Then the result is that one will be overwhelmed with despair.
Deji tambo tsikshi di karasarosana tambo tsikshi di negi shi ne meni sosolya ane chigi dunga nyongwe kabliya sosolya chig kangan chikhen sosolya tsewa chigi nyobe kikhen di pa chig nangwal pa dine chig shena tsaw chig xiayongdo kabla ta sosol shena ngamda ye chine ta dile di targo di gyokwan suyore san pa choshil pa zene ta tadyu ane dago re se che tsikshi di che ta ni tsigoma ni digi 한 초실파 따여도 되네 잡간 수지 매바지 통어도 아니 잡 통어도 아니 가르쳐는 셈ля다 배사송하데 동안용을 쓰베 강아시 우지 이무 셈군도 아니 이무 규르스데 셈ля 강아 이무 쉬용거래체 어두시네 다던다 직제 당부시다 되니 이번 이디 도나 디세오르와다.
So in your meditation, meditate on the 45th verse and these first two lines of the 46th. Who can perfectly protect me from this terrifying danger, I exclaim. With panic-stricken, bulging eyes, I search in all four directions for a protecting refuge. Seeing no protection in the four directions, my mind will become overwhelmed with despair. So here in the meditation, you're going through as if you were approaching your own death or have been born in the lower realms. And not being able to find anyone to come to your assistance, one can imagine the despair that would arise, that one would, through one's desperation, not being able to find anyone to assist one, to aid one, great deep despair would arise.
Deshe dagi jidarcha, jizada dusine dangbo ni di dangbo nga zikchi zhukcho sowa, di zhoduyan du samdaya de kar dangbo senda, da sosu ki le da nyomo wa rangwa meba shiwi ki jensan de le yodu, dini shiwa de liya, sosu liya tarya ki tablam kanis tabi ne sugangi gyop tuya siyo mares, ji membiye gyop tuya mindu, bunya da nyi do da, 강기 gyop tuya mindu, Lama da sangi ge gyop tuya yo mares, gyop tugu mindu, jizan gyop dene ki shiwa dile gyop kwendi kanya mindu waas, shiwi jensan de le yodu. Ta shi chani ma, ta nga zimbe nyewa gyeba ina, nyewa ro chuk gyeba ina, ta dene gye chade, dene nyewa dile ya gye yodu, ta nyema dipa sajibe dibi legi debu minjina sosuli ya, ane chige pe cewa jehen roji sosuli ya, ganga jen pe chig shena tsobu ngamdraji denigi sosul nyobi jehen roji semli ya dushene char yodu, ane shena shiuchi leje, ane dele gyobya tablamde kaze cebi ne gyobkhandi kaya, ane ragyo mares, gyobkhan mebanza da nyewa dili ya, dunga di nyonggu gore orda donda dushene yonggu gore dushene nga zo samdang gore orda samdang da shi gore wada digi 제자다 시위 시로치 되게 로버 지기요 말 제투고 말했어 수게 투고 말 시에데 사지에가 투여 말 레다 녀모 원게다 라와 시에 겐섬니데도 라마 상제 멤버 파모 본제 규치라 강기장 가투에 메르와 진짜 그 매완서 거의 시에만 시에로와 제가 dit 가투에 메도 되네 셈체지 용고로 와들이야 셈체지 거로 되네 마시 차네 녀왈 게네다 말 디파사지 빌리게 제보 동아 녀아지도 다 소소레 나와라 갈레오스네 되네게 소소레 녀바 지간 샤나 소보 되네게 지기 대소게 녀비기야로 레어도 되네 대소레 시에체네 암라 슈게체네 대소레 껴비야게 타야게 된다래야 겹도 파 초실 파 지간에도 체네라요 말 겹한 수제를 용하여 말요 말에스 어두 매와자다 제보 동아디 용고고래 제자 이모도 용 강아지 최고래서 언두시네 삼당고래서 다두시네.
Then the last two lines of the 46th verse.
줄레니마다 타만이기 말 대지 예비 죽디기도 한다듯이 대니기도 한다 제일 시야지.
So sorry, just staying with those initial six lines. Here then, in the meditation, perhaps you can combine these two different ways to interpret the first two lines by imagining that one's death is imminent, and that this is something that one has no power over. One hasn't chosen to die at this time or in this means, but one is being impelled due to one's karma and afflictions. And there's no one at that time who can save us. If we do not want to die, if we want to continue living, there's no one who can save us. Not our loved ones. No matter how much they care for us, there's nothing they can do. No matter how skilled the medical team is around us, there's nothing they can do. Not even the three jewels or our Lama can prevent our death because of the power of our karma and afflictions. Then, proceeding further, if we are born in the lower realms, such as in the hells, this will just be a result of our non-virtue. That's all. The non-virtue that remains on our continuum has the power to propel such a rebirth. Then, recognizing the terrible suffering that we are about to meet, strong desperation will arise within us. Something far more than just despair, but a desperation. But there is nothing that we can do.
Sometimes denegi that Rami Shine Nyawa Denigi Dungan and Dinshorwa, the Zulian Denigi Tabram Kaya Midwas and Big to sometime. That dene as other ne did give you a maina, Cedar Dagi Chidarcha, said, they said Dagi Chidarcha, said, the ne did in the Naviki, nearly Kiesana, Kiesavicella. Jebu di nyoya mato, jebu di nyo mohoya tablam kaya meba jeb kandi kaya minduas, neti jeb yu mayina jeb kaya minduas. Meba ansang di tse, sido dinigi jeb meba di tse, kaya chiya mares, dagi chidar changan zu kaya dile tarayagi tablam di kaya chi tuya mares, meba za dunga di nyongo gore esa, tango su di chikshi gore.
46th verse concludes then with, there being no refuge here at all, at such a time, what shall I be able to do? So here now we imagine ourselves having taken rebirth in the lower realms. What can we do? There is nothing now that we can do.
다기 지더샤스네 데니게 강아 마체기 돈다디 만저 가르치고래서 가는 지고래라나 지더샤세 돈다디 딜리오 슈글라 가르치고래서는 다장아 솔야 라와 요래서다 라와 요래 탑람디 베제 제는 좀난 두베기 라와 요바 고가 요바 탑람디 방은 랍켄기 기회 신유 요바 데니게 뒤디 다자 요래서 제가 다다가 저 가르치고 그래서는 간에 지더자 시도 간에 자고를 지고 그래서는 제가 디니기 다 삼노다제 디니기 냐위게 라함에 봐 동아기 냐발이 끼고야도 유가를 되네 끼고래 디기 안에 제부 동아 용화데 제부 용구도 와서 제가 유가를 제부래 도신의 심주치 제바 제네 되네 삼단에 제가 유디 레응 녀모바 녀모바죠. 녀모바드네 레사 델라티니 키 데니 제보용구도와 데니 인자다 유녀모바디 파 메바서야 탑람다 아니 디바디 메바서 빠야다 샤야다 데니 게위디 강아토도 주국도와스 두신의 삼다 데니 인자다 데니게 강아체 유 디바냐마 제샤바디 벤 노샤스 단 지민도와스 제사다 치만에 싸워기네 지금매 지메스 디네 장에 디링 고급 유리 소소라 라왕 고급 유리 갑라 이 녜마 디바디에 파 샤네 디네 게와 강투도 주기 게와 주기 제사데 코발에 게게 탑람디 다다 시산에 메니냐와 기베 내갑라 교판 수지 제투고 말해 교판 수지요 말 다다 나 유비 갑라 나라 캡칸 로지겐 다 캡템 바바 산요콘조다 kin 주베 다로 기둥건초 예리 바레 다 소소라랑기 곰 캡테니 시게와 주베이나 안데 교고어레 세상 다들 고고요 바디 디네 상이디 녜마 제바는 노트 디바사 제바데 노트 친진의 데네기 디바 지기메 데네자 디링에다 데네기 디바디 개화디 강토도 주기스 개화치마 나솔 마기야 덴저 데네기 동안마 뇽모에기 다 탑람 개화 주베디 다 다데닝이 주기 셈피기다 두신지 삼다 제호레에서 디에서 다기 지더자스도 소소게다 제대로 고브라와이도 간에 제호레에서도 두시 삼다 제게와 주고레에서지.
The third line, there being no refuge here at all. So this here refers to where we have now taken rebirth. There is no refuge, there is no protection. And the final line, at such a time, what shall I be able to do? So this is what we imagine in our meditation. What will we do in such a position? What would we do in such a position? And this, in reality, is the position that so many beings have found themselves in and are now lost in the lower realms. But this isn't our position right now. Right now, we are still here with a precious human rebirth, with all the incredible potential that entails. And moreover, we have met the Dharma, we've met a teacher, and we have the mental capacity to train our minds, to transform our minds radically. So we have an incredible opportunity, and we use this meditation to recognize that once again. We ask ourselves, why would ourselves potentially be born in the lower realms, or why are those other beings there right now? It is due to their karma ripened by their afflictions. Therefore, that is what potentially awaits me unless I transform my mind now, unless I utilize well whatever remains of this life to purify the non-virtuous imprints on my mind, those previously accumulated non-virtuous imprints, and to also ensure I turn away from accumulating new non-virtuous imprints. So here we generate regret for past misdeeds and commit to restraining our mind from coming under the influence of negativity. And we commit to utilizing what remains of our opportunity in this life to radically transform our mind so that we do not find ourselves in the position that so many others have.
Shiwi Gablia Ganga Dinitine Ngamdra Shena Dine Yungore, she sent a Nyawal Majinu and Dunga Dine Yungura Ganga Dine Yungur Simte Dine Yungores, Dine Chikanga and Ngamdra Shena, Simte Yobadi, my Shigor Wada, the Shigor Wada, study the Shigorwa. That in the Shigor de Karasene, Aranzugi, Dine Sudi Hagu Marwada. Hagu Mara, Hamoa in the Dadanga to the Shio Mare, Nyawala Geo Mare, Shio Mare, Shiwi, Dungadi, Daddy Yomare, Mevas and as Hagu Marva. Hamoanza, the need in the Yores and Anzolia, Ratur of Chigor, what in Hakowachi. She's a deniga her Hako, the need the Yores and Bigida, Tushin, Geshe Thubten, so Rangi, that they don't know the need Yores and be ye chevada, Dick put share delia, the son of the Yichiche. And it's when yours and same touch about the Ichiro Jeda. And Sosugi in a Gumse Samda, Yubi, Gumse Samda, Jebache, Dushin Samda, Yevadi, Hakobata, did Yobaina, going on the Sosugi, Tablam Karayungur Sene, Sosugi, De Majoy, Denigi, Ganga Machegi, Tablam di Datene, Beshut Naje, Zegi, Beshut Naje, Duvia, Tablam Duvegi, Kohabiova. Di Yoyaki Dondalia, Shigor, then the Yores, Suya di Sungura, Cesade, Denisungura, Cesade, the Tablam Yores Sumbane, and Sosugi, Tabla de Maduba, Jigi, the Hamogana, Di Tarege, Tablam the Dugumarwa, Cesade, Hamoa and Zan, the Mangaje, the Gidane, that do sing on Mangaje, Chiki, Lia Chunsel Paco or Dugoras and Denigi. Ganga Yobading on the Sabre Hagu Mare, she's a Hamoaza. Tis a Denigi par Raturche, Tablam Denigi, Caso the Ganga Yobat part, Deniyobadi, Raturche, then how go you do, and Denea, Dele, Tariagi, Tablam de Dead, Dubia Kohobia Bainza, Tablam Dubia Dondalia, the Sonia de Dondadi Sungorwada.
What's presented in these two verses is something that we need to come to truly recognize for ourselves, that we have no control, no independence over our death and our place of rebirth. This isn't something that we hold power over in our own hands. And that when our death comes, at a time and perhaps in a manner that is unwanted, then deep regret may arise for a wasted opportunity, as well as worry about our future rebirth. So this we need to truly recognize for ourselves, because intellectually, probably most of you understand this, but the way we live our life is as if we have no idea of this. We act as if we seem to intentionally ignore this, act like someone who does not know this. So therefore, we need to reflect on and come to recognize the reality of our death being uncontrolled, that there is no certainty when we will die, how we will die. Our age, our health is not a accurate guide of when death will come. And moreover, we also tend to ignore the reality that one may well fall into the lower realms. This is the tragedy of the situation of all ordinary beings, that death can befall them at any moment, and their next rebirth may be significantly worse than this one. So firstly, this needs to be recognized, and that then should, recognizing the reality of our situation, should spur us to ask further questions. Why is this the case? And here we reflect on the role that karma and afflictions play. And we're coming to recognize how things happen due to the power of the karma that we have accumulated. We then ask ourselves the third question. We first recognize the situation that a death and rebirth awaits us. And secondly, why this is the case, due to karma and afflictions. Thirdly, we ask ourselves, so what can be done about this? Are we helpless in this situation? And based on what we've heard, we'll quickly recognize our situation is not hopeless. Because we have this remarkable, precious human rebirth, we hold our future in our hands, that we can transform our minds radically and thereby transform the trajectory of our future lives. Right now, what primarily is holding us back is not clearly recognizing our situation.
And Diva Masaya ge tablam kharesone gewa sahors ki dibi doksho de gewa de gewa sahors je gewa sa ne diva rasen ka do gores pene khondro se de diva wa jine shel ya jamba da jewe samba jamjo komba na khondro de ngyo ya mares desa khondro gi mas de khondro me ki gi mares khondro ma je na khondro wa ge shel le chiksu shel le chiksu phe ba da ane lyu ji ko ne 샤리아 체와체바다 안지 용마르와 진짜 디버스하고 말해서 진짜 잠재 공부를 진짜 잠재 공부이나 대소를 겹토그래 해야지 다 가지려 규디바이 바데 하고 와체 진짜 규디바마 디버샤스도다 디버샤스도 디바디 냐만제 사와들 겹바게 아니 개와사야다 아니 마오바는 디버 깨마줘야게 탑람제 바까야 삼다 대디 안주되는 대 삼로디 다들 삼로디 안에 가르쳐다스네 개위 쳐를 삼다야디 곰시 삼로디 개위 쳐 삼다야디 곰시서 오래서 다디 탑람디리 해서 다디 디두고 오래서 지시고로 니네 탑람디 두바이나 안에 시디갑리네 안에 제가 메바 시두고디네 남자 셴나디 용말해서 다가서네 시고마 가서네 디 시베는 규된 사바네 신나 가와기 그래서네 덴돌레 기그래 덴돌레케나 덴도디 텔레야 안 루심기 되게 연구를 안 대하징하는 저기 냠네 야고 개와 야고 사토베나 탈바다 탐지 김비고 톱도게 되나 땡기 대화를 마도 농하세대 자원을 말해 와서 진에 되네게다 개와 사바나 되네게다 제보 야고 통이도 오다딩이 안 배수신의 상인 샘피게 당한 저기 개와 주기를 마서나 샘내야 군을 마서나 한 집배주의 지긴 샘피게 뉴슈기야다 되녀기 듬바처리야다 디니기와 주비알이야 안지게 배주 숙체 용고와 어두신 하고 바이나 하고지 지산 디네자데 냐마 강아데네 용고래 지산 디 용아도 규디네 진의 용고래 지레다 뒤도 쇼라야 규디라 마게 탑랑 규디파 마게 탑랑 가르치는 개와 주부레스 다 개와 주는 제부 가르용하서는 개와 치말을 개바네 덴들을 기르고래 And dendril kebane dendril tela digi yon mata masung dunga de kinyewi dunga de yon goya mare esa. And dele yang de gewadi shukche ju tu bainene and tarbe go ma to gure ne ji ta chon bada ne san yi go ma to bana dine dingi de wa top sare de dunga sa de gidine zawa kinyo ya mare esa. On du shin sung go wa da dala.
In this reflection, in a sense, we are making potential maps of what may follow in our future lives, thinking about the directions that our lives may take, potential problems and difficulties we may encounter, and recognizing that all of these are unwanted, and all problems and difficulties come from the same cause, the same general cause, non-virtue. And when we really recognize this, a strong and deep resolve will arise within us to refrain from accumulating further non-virtue and to rather accumulate virtue. So for example, we'll recognize that a mind such as anger in all its manifestations, from frustration and annoyance all the way up to rage, all these categories of anger are non-virtuous. And it's when one gives rise to these minds and they dominate one, overwhelm one may well accumulate non-virtue on the mental level, but one may even express these minds through one's physical behavior or way of speaking. And these all compound the non-virtue that we accumulate, which is the causes of our suffering. So this is what we need to refrain from. And the skillful way to refrain from them is with a deep and sincere resolve to refrain, as well as the commitment to develop the contrary minds, the opposing minds, such as love and compassion. Because the more one focuses on developing minds of love and compassion, the more those very minds will more easily arise within one and will start to ever more dominate one. The way we will speak, the way we will act towards others will be influenced by love and compassion, these minds that we are developing well within us. And because we are now becoming ever more compassionate, ever more loving people, minds such as anger will struggle to arise. And even when they do, they'll be weak and they won't be powerful. They will not last. So the skillful way then to abandon non-virtue, such as minds such as anger, is firstly to have this resolve to no longer allow those minds to arise, or if they do, to immediately reject them. And also, accompanying that determination, the determination to rather cultivate the wholesome minds, which are opposite to those, such as love and compassion, and rather have love and compassion be the minds that guide how one lives. And the result of this is, as we develop ever more love and compassion, we accumulate far more virtue. And as we are accumulating the virtue, which means we are being dominated by virtuous minds, such as love and compassion, the non-virtuous minds, such as anger, are struggling to arise, and therefore we are accumulating far less non-virtue. Then, if we apply ourselves well to this method over what remains of this life, when death comes, we will still have no freedom, no control over our death. It will befall us. But the way we leave this life and move to the next will be radically different. We will leave without fear. We'll die without fear, and we'll progress without fear because we'll have confidence. We'll have confidence because we have lived this last period of our life well, which means we've developed an abundance of wholesome minds, and therefore we can have confidence in our future rebirths. Then when we leave this life, we'll be letting go this body, and we'll be confident about our new rebirth. And then, with this confidence, we'll know that we'll take rebirth once again in the higher realms with many favorable conditions which will aid our ongoing spiritual progression and our rapid attainment of liberation from suffering and enlightenment itself.
Di madro nyele ne ya, ane kaangre tene ke chenpo shiwo re, ane nige de zhangmo di yo re, ane de ya zaya le ya, cho lo ma son de cho di ne ya zhogo re, ane zho tang ro di di ko re, sa jingo che che da, ane de le ya, ane jik zho ya da, guan ya ke gangpo le guan ya di ne ko re, ane lakpo le guan ya di guan ne di ne ko re, ane di ma dewi ka pli ba jik 가르가르 고 체시 가르가르 튕긴 가르가르 고고요 바데 파차사 제시 제고로 와데 제시 잡 근데 바로 마도 녀려 안 장도로 지금 뭐 지고로 와데 장 제사데 데네기 제네 안 편이 줘버네 강아 중화로 와데 가르스네 고 가리나 튕긴 차사 상대 바지 두고로 봐 데네 줘고야지래 장도로 균에메 봐 제지 백이 내수데 가야 하 먹어지 견수 주고는 가야 주고 있으네 지 대가면 줘버네 편이 가고 제퇴해야 말다. 편이 레선에 가고 제퇴해야 말. 자야 제퇴 가고 제퇴해야 매래. 제사다 제퇴해야 매래. 편이 레선에 가서 녀를 드리제야 말아. 어디 난시래. 제사다 드리제 퇴인데 맞아지. 야 리칸이야 제레야다 되네게 되네 잡아다 게 빠르게 연구로 봐. 제사 마시바다 되네게 연구로 봐. 제사지 가리네 안쪽에 녀려야 장도로도 수치에 제게 사질 마소는 제가 모두에 제지 직시 기초 가르가르 고고 튕긴 가르가고 차상 체연도 디 차상 셰고 힘든 가르서는 디 튕긴 제지 제게 된다를 시고로 와 제지 제게 된다 장도로 제게 된다를 시고로 와 제사다 다디 셰바 나시 제지 제 장도로 제바 있나 안 파조베네 안 지기 야고용하다 데네게 답니 장도를 제야다 데리 제야데 가야 마시바제 티조베는 데네 강아셔야 임바로 데네 인자당한 주기 데네게 네 장도 최고 데리 최고도와 제모를 제비네 마제니엘이야 안지 제마제하게 지그 강바 고야다 한과 가르가 탑 주제 가르가요 차상 데리 데네 고고라서 파제 죄제다 데리 제 데네 장도 최고 고도와 어디 나신 당한 주기와 치마 줘야 되려야 제사다 고야 될래 저 기와 치마 줘야 될이야 가르가르 야가치 줘서 될이야 아주 튕긴 가르가르 고고에서 튕긴의 드리지야다 조상을 마선 되는 조구리 제사 랩사들 마선 사지 되는 용구리 해야지 모두 시된 다시 해야 돼 임제로 지지버지게 차유도 와돼 되네 자데 내수다 하고나 안에 드리지야게 드리지하고 중소나 근데 강아셀 세두고 봐. 디던다라 당한 저기 디순고를 녀래. 다디 강아 유사디 예시. 지상 강아 유나 유버다 다 강아세게 탑람데 되는 시오래서 탑람데 시디 만 저기는 지단게 지용기다. 조상다 지과로래도 와다. 죄자 돈다 가서 죄자디 가가래 마도. 조상으로 지버리도 와.
Let's say you have a dream to go on a trekking holiday in high snow mountains, and you decide, this is the year, this is the holiday, I'm going to fulfill this dream. So hopefully one will go about it in a sensible manner, in a wise and intelligent manner, that you'll research the place you're going to go climbing, you'll choose a good route, and you'll look at all the provisions that you need to be able to go on this journey, and you'll look at what level of fitness and skill you need, and train well in advance. And perhaps you may want a guide on your trekking holiday, and you'll plan everything well. And we know if one has such a dream and prepares for it in this way, you're likely to have a fantastic holiday. But if you have a friend who hears about your holiday that you're going on just, let's say next week, and they say, I'm coming too, and they buy their ticket, but beyond that they do no preparation, that friend's going to experience a lot of problems. It will not go well for them. And why? They didn't prepare. They didn't train themselves. So likewise here, in terms of our our onward journey from life to life. If we just hope for the best, it's not likely to turn out as we would desire. But if we prepare well, then our onward journey is likely to go excellently. Or perhaps if you have no real interest in going trekking in the mountains, many people enjoy engaging in sports and various activities. Likewise with those, if you train well, you gather knowledge to learn how to train, what skills, how to develop skills, you get guidance from those who are particularly skilled, and you train with vigor, you'll become a skilled athlete in whatever your chosen field is. And if you apply yourself with consistency over a sustained period, you will succeed. And in fact, you may even exceed your expectations. So analogies such as these apply very closely to our spiritual development. The subject matter is a bit different, training for sports or go trekking in the mountains. But the method is identical. One needs to gather knowledge, one needs to prepare well, and one needs to train, and train repeatedly. And to the level that one prepares and trains, to that level one will succeed and possibly even exceed one's expectations.
Diva Kasora, Tenle Tayag, Gawa Tubeda, and Siore Lanada, Jamni Conjo Suna, Den, Diva Shana Gawa to get it to Hure, such Masungora, the thing you took ma Dikor Mashugore.
Here at the 46th verse, we conclude a large section. I think we start from about the 27th or 8th verse, looking at the power of regret. Now we come to the second of the four opponent powers, the power of reliance, or the power of the basis. We come to the 47th verse. Thus to the conquerors, the protectors of migrators, who strive for the purpose of shielding sentient beings, and with immense power eradicate all dangers, I turn to them for protecting refuge from today onwards.
Dunga dene nyongo ba yongo ore chesa dene meba nyongo was ta dene ge jige dunga nyoye yu nyomo ba de pa ke ma je ke ho tu ba ne ani dene ge ka de la tagi over was dene inza yumchen dene inza ane jawa se de yumchen je dene jawa ru gwen se de jawa se de da Java Sangi Tiki Java, Yomo Biki, Gun Bachadan Jabal, Droje Pajache Drene, and Gun Se Yunde Gunda Dembeke, Java Sangi, Captain Boba Sangi, Chizan Java Sangi de Javadi, Yomo Bakun Hamji Jawade, Chezadi, and the Drew Gun Race, Chezan Anzulia, that Sangi, Manzulia, Kuyu Dungal Sea, that Dungal, Yomoaki, Tablam. Digi tablan yu nyamling rimbadi ma su tingor sangi tingor disa sangi denganzu and she draw semja tamje koyu dunga le pa dreje ya tarba tamje kibo go wan le chiga chiba chigendi gwendi re saje dini deve ngevi tu gwen saje this.
The first word, thus, so thus implies a reason. So when this is the linking word between this former section of around 20 verses, which we're looking at the power of regret. So this then is implied through the word thus, that through having generated deep regret for past non-virtuous deeds, and thereby the commitment to refrain from them and to purify them, this links into the second opponent power, that of reliance, or the basis. And then the line continues to the conquerors. So the conquerors is a epithet for Buddhas, and they are called conquerors in that they have conquered their afflictions entirely. And then the protectors of migrators. So this also refers to the Buddhas. They are the protectors of migrators, and the way they protect sentient beings is through guiding sentient beings how to develop the Dharma in their own mind, because it's through sentient beings developing their own mind that they protect themselves from suffering. And the protectors are, in this case, the Buddhas, the protectors or the guardians, in that they teach and guide sentient beings how to transform their own minds.
배주 가서 준주치네 중고래 잘래 가서 내가 지고래 좀 봐서 내가 지고래 해서 보고 다도 나라 상이이 아줄래 동아세 단 디유드에 탈람게디나 다 탑시 나서고 토네 아줄 냐 림바 띵고 냠네 림바 띵고래 제래다 된적.
The second line, who strive for the purpose of shielding sentient beings. So the Buddhas, they strive with the purpose or the intention, with the purpose of protecting or shielding sentient beings. In other words, guiding sentient beings, teaching sentient beings how to develop their own minds so as to developing minds of virtue, which lead to happiness, and how to abandon the unwholesome minds, the minds of non-virtue, which would otherwise lead to suffering. So this is the purpose of the Buddhas, of the conquerors. The purpose is to guide beings to develop within themselves protection from suffering, or freedom even from suffering.
야는 봐 야와레스 지상 내가 저기 조위고 마도 람템보 보드레스 다디 두시 안에 내가 가래 답변 내가 내가 마서 제세 마준 내가 가는 거래라나 어느 조기비 된제 봐서도 조 심제 탐지 코르 동아리 파 겹제 안에 심징에 된다 인보디 띵기 대화 토백이 된다 니 토백이 된다라 안에 지금 마 잘내는 거래서 다 잘내가는 가는 거라서는 가서를 취해 되냐면 림바된 두시는 거래서 답변 지게 당보 계획이 랑경고 연대 되네 아니 야와디기 자와 가는 시골신 자와 제다지 두시는 중고송도.
Looking at these first two lines then together. So instead of saying conquerors, we could use the word Buddha. And Buddhas, the meaning of the word Buddhas is someone who has a being who has completely and entirely abandoned every fault, even a trace, or not leaving behind any trace of even a single fault. So they've completely abandoned all faults and their seeds and stains. And together with this, they have developed all good qualities to a point of perfection. This is a Buddha. This is a Buddha. And the purpose, the very purpose of a Buddha is to guide suffering sentient beings, to guide all others who are not yet Buddhas, to attain a similar state, to attain the same state of perfection that a Buddha has achieved. So the conquerors or Buddhas are perfected beings, and now the second line, their very purpose is they strive to guide all beings to achieve that same state of perfection, that state of Buddhahood.
Dene dobjin jibo kunsella sidi dobjin jibo dob chenpo se da de dob chenpo se da ne sangye le ya sangye se de zhuyu gun gyön tamje dan de ane yön da tamje top chawa ane sem zhuyu gun re an chale ma so na zhuwa semje tamje Digi to Dunga Selen, Duda Namba Kondo, and Dusine, and Jik Dusin Chalan Angores, Nangor was. The genial said, Sanje said, Garage Garrison, Sanje said, Nyomo, Yun Tam Basa, the Jeba, the Jew, Yun Tam Tosawa, and actually Lam Dembo Gueres. Just a going to and Lega Karanango, Chale Karanangosan, Duda Namba Kun, Semjen Tamji Dungal Dread, Digu to a Lamde, Yamling Rimba, Kidina Dungores, Chishi Sungores, right, Yamling Dingores, Masherwada, did the genial Shakerwa. Dini that and Dini Jabana, and the Koran and Dinigin Anzulia, Dungal Dread Huyegi, Nuba Yorbes and Nuba Yore, Top Chembo or Ejere, Top Gari Chembos and Guyu Top, Sungu Top. And because of 2 you top said, on top you top your, soon you top your, 2 you top your ass, Kusun 2 soon you top said.
Looking again at the first 2 lines, and then moving to the third. So in the first 2 lines, we recognize that Buddhas are, or conquerors, are perfected beings. They have completely and entirely eradicated all faults, and they have perfected all good qualities. Therefore, they are a perfect guide to teach us the Dharma, guide to help us develop the qualities of the Dharma in our own mind. And then into the third line, do they have the capacity to actually help us? And we see here in the first word of the Tibetan is immense power. They have immense power. And the power of the Buddhas is through their physical activities, their speech, as well as their incredible minds, as well, and fourthly, their enlightened activities. So this is the immense power that the Buddhas have.
Dine top chembo yores, and Dinashin Yaya, and the Jike, Kembi top yores, Zeyu top yores, Nubi top yores, Zebatinigi top yores, or that the top she. 캠페 또 제외 또 때문에 최 탐제 마캠바 강야요 막 차상 캠페 누구 켄对吧 아니 제외 또 없이도 샬이야 안 제와 첨보여 봐 제외 또 아니 누바 누비 또 아니 제가 가서 오래 제버친리게 또 운도승고레스 또 첨보여레스.
Actually, 2 ways that one can think of the immense power of Buddhas. The first is their body, speech, and mind, so their physical activities, their teachings, their communication, as well as their mind. And the second way is through the power of their wisdom, the power of their loving kindness, their power of their activities, and their power in general. So these are 4 other qualities that they have: wisdom, loving kindness, enlightened activities, and power.
Denigi top chembo side, Denigi Nubo Yores, Denigi that dinner the top Mangutanga Yayor, that much Shushayamara, Denigi Yores, Jeza Denigi Yobanza, top Sangelia, Denigi top chembo Yobazan, top Tela Dine, Jibokun les, and Jikbanganzu, Korigi, Koala, Leda, Numo Wangi, Koala, Rawame, Bagiata, and the Korea Dunga, the Noadelia, Jibati Passe to Yagi. In Jiba, Koyu, you led a Yomobadi say to Gure, and Dizu Jibu Dunga, and Koyu Dunga, Yongadi, Dunga dele, say to Gure, Jiba, Jikbi, Dunga, Jiba said Dunga Gangaje, Jiba di you led a Yomobada, Di Jibu, Jiba Dunga Chazala, and Gunsella dele in the say to Gures.
There are further ways to understand that the powers of the Buddha are presented, or sometimes called here the strengths of the Buddha. But we'll leave that there for now. But what the Buddhas do with their power is, we have here, with immense power, eradicate all dangers. So what that means is that the Buddha, through the powers of the Buddha, through the powers of the Buddha, they eliminate the dangers that beings are in. So the way Buddhas eliminate the dangers that beings are in is not that the Buddhas remove the dangers that beings are in, but the Buddhas teach and they guide suffering beings to change their minds, to transform their minds. So through sentient beings transforming their minds under the guidance of the teachings of the Buddha, they eradicate all dangers. So actually, sentient beings are doing the process of eradication themselves, but under the guidance, the careful guidance of the Buddhas. And the fears that beings, or dangers that the beings gain freedom from, is freedom from fears of uncontrolled death and rebirth. And how does one gain freedom from such fear? On the initial level, through confidence that one has accumulated a lot of virtue. But what one is really striving for is to gain complete freedom from uncontrolled death, so that one never again takes uncontrolled death and rebirth, because one has eradicated their causes completely. One has eradicated such karma and the ripening afflictions. And in that way, one gains freedom from uncontrolled death and rebirth.
Digi dang jugi sangye goncho ki yunden tempa tsu la sangye goncho yunden. Da sangye goncho la gyab tunpo po sangye goncho la yunden gargar yorosene ane jigi top kempyo top dan zeyo top dan nubyo top dan zeba chinliyo top guyo top sungyo top tende shi yore sebi nuba jeza di yunden tempa shi jeza inza da dunga koryo dunga tada le sui gyobgo resene 상이 땜바 상이 좀 제를 교비기 니바디 요래서 교투의 니바디 술 요래서 땜바 상이 좀 내들 요래서 대신아도 디니를 야셔야 될 거서 뭐 레다니모 코와라마메 바지 코와르기는 동아 연구를 동아딘의 연구를 사실로 하다 다 동아들레다 타고 고도 사다 삼는 니벨리로 하다 다 강아드는 이제 타고 등가 간스 타그리 될 교투비기 니바디 술 요래서 삼다이도 제가 땜바 상이 좀 내들 요래서 제가디 여바 가래라네 덤바 상제 좀 내네 코롱 예만 냠는 제네 코유 뇨모 倦 탐단 타달을 줘야지 산조고바 토와래 야와래 줘와래스 아니 코롱기 아니 코롱을 가려서 제네 코롱기 캠비연데 시제 말류 연데 탐치스서 캠바래스 캠비연데요 아니 제위연데 심지어 탐질에 제와요래스 누버요래스 데네게 샹리아 동화세야다 디기두에 람든지에 누버 차상요래스 제사다 누버 여바자 데니게 마 땡치네 제버틴레스 제버틴레 마 데니게 땡체 샹리아 펜버드데 셴망부 녀레 망부 동화를 세제 코유 동화를 줘야 탈바다 탐제 효고 고바 망부 토바 중요레스 제사 데니게 제버틴레 누버 요레 제사다 데니 규베 누버디 술 요레스 제브네 건조숨 가서 상유 건조를 예 세베기다 요레세 요두 세베기 데니게 삼다데 델레 규베 누버디 건조숨 상유 건조를 요바디 하고 하지. 되네 여바자 하고네 되네 삼다 되네 디링이네 접수치시도 대링이네 접수 다디 나 상이기 상유권주 쪼그리 선배다 이치게야들 이치게다 디 고르동아 타달래다 상유권 뜸바 상유권 쪼그리 접다 쪼팽기 다 접점법보다 상유좀네 선배기다 이체네 되네 교구를 SMP 이시진에 디링이네 접수치에서 디링이네가 이치네 접수 좋네 되네 니 산얘기마 람된바나시 냠는 지긴세로 와다.
This verse then is referring to the qualities of the Buddha jewel. So amongst the three jewels, the first jewel, the Buddha jewel, our founder teacher, possesses the qualities of wisdom, of loving kindness, of power and enlightened activities. And to answering the question, how does he have such power? He has, firstly, with such power, why is he suitable for us to rely on him? And it's because the Buddha is a perfected being. The Buddha can therefore perfectly guide us to gain freedom from the sufferings of samsara, which are all caused by our karma and afflictions. And why is the Buddha in particular so reliable? Why should one rely on the Buddha rather than anyone else? And that is because a Buddha has achieved that goal and therefore is guiding one not from mere theoretical knowledge, but from personal lived experience. A Buddha has abandoned completely the afflictions together with their seeds and imprints, and accompanying that, develops all good qualities perfectly. To the extent that one recognizes that those qualities of the Buddha, that the Buddha has this remarkable power, one will have a deep and abiding confidence or trust in the Buddha. And this then is expressed in the fourth line. I turn to them, so the Buddhas, for protecting refuge from today onwards.
Di jishin chakwa de jishin le shen ngang son le kine dunga nyungu re dele ya kanga de de yore sebe samdana de deni ngang son da kine dunga je le jishin chakwa se samdana che gyut chikche da dene ndele gyube nyuba ane koncho le yoba tong yoba ha ko wa se de jisada dire de sanji koncho le ya sanji koncho gi da gyön namche dan chawa yende tamche de temba kembe yun ze nyube yenden zeba tin le yenden de du sembege du 제대 대대 규베 뉴바데 때 바상에 좀 두 셈비게 하고 하체 디니 하고 해도 되네 디디네 봐 안델레야 안 교불이 사실 되게 코에 동안들다 산지게 교불이 섭이 이체 딩게제네 되네 이체가 그런 다디 잠르듯이 잠르 교불이 섭이 이체데 이체 그런다 잠르래 제자다 이체네 다 잠르기 마 산지게 랍자 말 송샤바들 랍기 세베 냠는 제야디다 개워 주비야 차거와 제자데네자 누시나 삼다디 맞다 잠르래 산주군줄라 접수 주비 잠르듯이 시고다 되데 이거서 그래서 산주군라 접수 주비게 대진이를 해야 되게 산주군라 군줄라 접수 주비게 균이 규다 다디시 균이 되체 식타마디게 데링이네 접수 시에서도 나 산유 건설을 접수되게 잠로 것이 어디지 디시고다 네 잠로게를 균이여와 나서 코와다 나서 동안의 지신 잡아서야 돼 대신가 중요해야 안에 동아되는 여셔 지신 잡아 규직셔래 다데델이야 야와조 주요권 주요주고 된전바 dob진치고 군세라세 뉴버디는 여러셔야 돼 산유 연된되는 여러셔야 돼 다 델로규베 뉴버 수요를 산유 건설 여바 세디 규지치켜라 대딘이 균이제 다 균이 여자다 타마디게 디링이네 접수치 세디 데네 장에 야 닝이 동아 타달에 산유 좀 낸디게 껴그래 셈베게다 이체 딩이 깨바디 이체 깨바디다 잠종원에 원에 쓰고 시고다 지산 산유 건설에 접수주비게 균이리시 데네 산유 건설에 접수주비게 cap문에 시고라 cap점로듯이 지나디 cam로체에 개와라 지나다 cap수주의 유 상계라 되네 cap수주고자 다 개와사건자 디버샤야디 지电이 돕시로다
Here we're seeing now in the power of reliance or the power of the basis. So we're turning here for refuge to the three jewels, starting in this verse by looking at the Buddha jewel, the founder teacher. And refuge has two causes. The first is fear, the second is faith, or instead of faith, one can say trust. So the first cause is that for refuge is that of fear. And that fear can be expressed as fear for falling into the lower realms, or fears for the sufferings of samsara in its entirety. So this first cause of refuge we have already been cultivating within ourselves in the previous many verses that were making reference to the sufferings of the lower realms, in particular the hells. So thereby, when one was reflecting on a potential rebirth that may await us, one generates fear for such a rebirth and made the commitment to purify past misdeeds and refrain from new misdeeds. So there one is already generating the first cause for refuge. Here now, in this verse, we cultivate the second cause, that of faith in the qualities of the Buddha. And we've looked briefly at the qualities of the Buddha, recalling his qualities of wisdom, loving kindness, enlightened activities, and power, or the qualities of his body, speech, and mind. And one here in this way generates a second cause of refuge. Then one develops confidence or faith in the Buddha, confidence that it's suitable to turn to the Buddha for protecting refuge. So just briefly to say as the translator, the normal word for refuge up here, rather here in the verses to come, translated it sometimes as protecting refuge, because the word for refuge means to protect. So just to make that a little clearer. So back to Geshe's commentary. So now, by having generated initially fear at potential suffering of the lower realms, as well as when reflecting on our karma and afflictions and the suffering that leads to, one has developed fear for the sufferings of samsara in its entirety. Then one here now also generates faith in the Buddha jewel, and then turns in the fourth line, now turn to them, the Buddhas, for protecting refuge from today onwards. Here then one makes a stable commitment to rely on the Buddha jewel and to turn to the Buddha jewel for protecting refuge. This mind of refuge that has been generated here is a virtuous mind, and virtuous minds serve to purify non-virtuous minds. Virtuous minds are causes for happiness, are causes for good rebirths, and they also serve to purify non-virtue on our continuum. So therefore, whilst this is a verse of generating refuge, and therefore in the four opponent powers, it's the power of reliance, it also serves as an antidote. So therefore, indirectly, explicitly is the power of reliance, or the power of the basis, but implicitly it is also the power of the antidote.
Adona dang on the shady Karasungos, Dangazo, some Dantadil, Labor, Dangazo, some two Stangores, as some Dana Labor, just some Danang and say Lamnata, Dango, Taleda, Numo, Wongi, Taran, maybe she to the Kala, and Sugange Katuya came into us, Jezan Pamopunya, Nido, Sanjeta, the member Sungi near Katuya, the Katuya to us. Jezan dig out to a medicabla. And the niggy she do cablia, so sugi, Chikiva that the niggy, Mangosayo Baina, and the Shidu cablia, and the Cecilia, Tunga delia, Casode, Shia delia, Tiobiago, Dondalia, she said, as a same head, Gangas, Tunga Mabungo was the niggy some shit. That is she is her Diva Mangosa, she wena, and then Ansol kid, Ansol ba, Dunga, Kanga ledu, that the niggy Yakanga Mambo, Kanga de la Tayag, some night. Roaching a guy, maybe get a nigger on a ganga, Dunga Yongo, the Yungores, Yungores. Just the days that the Dunga to give you got it in was you divorce our you develop in Yungore was it. On Duchene, and Duchene, Jabacha sometime. That tell ya that in and that Delia Tareki, Taplum Ganes, your Ganes Tatugure, Lamnada, Taps Yore, Taplum Yore, Yomare, Delia, Ganga, Delia, Job Tuyegi. 투구를 두고 말해서 델레 타는 타고 우두 태강아 딜레 타고 마산데 타 민두 세상 타고 와서 강아 딜레 타야기 탑람 접 투근데 술 요래 잡제도 상예세 요래 저 상예래 건조숨로 요래서 오다 건조숨로 요래서 건조숨로 요래 딜교비기 접 투기 니버 술 요래 잡네 건조숨로 요래서 여자나 상제 건조라 가려 요래라네 상제 건조세디 고롱 예만 냠내 제네 곰잡 냠는지 제사 녀모바 바샤다 제바 빵네 탈치 바레스 그런 게 탈치 바레스 제사 그런 다 드유고에 마저라 람템바 보서지 아저 다 그런 게 냠용도네 마저 랍투에 예데 봐서 곰보차 그래스 제사 그런 게 아니 거야 지게디네 셴헬 동아세 디기두열 템바잖냐 두고래서 되는 봐 제사데 그런이야 Denigi, Zayunden, Kembe Yunden, and the Nubi top, Denigi Zabatin top, Denigi Nuba Yoba, and Corona Yoba, Sanjel Yor Edge. Jedushene, Jebache, Samta, Jebache, Duce Sanjel Yunden, Denis to that, delete you Nuba Sanji, Dua, Sambig, the Hagoid, or that is the Durinis on the Delia, Sanji, Nending, Nekanga Sanji, Doguri, Sambigi, Yishade, the Jamdrache. 다 이체바 이치 제는 가르쳐서 상지에 말람된 제제바 될 양이 수신도 냠는 지긴 세배 삼다에다 누스치는 장고래 삼당고래 제자다 상지에 숨셰비게 수진 냠는 제대 가래 상지에 숨야디 류가 있으면 예제된 비 수름 송고래서 하다 안지 샹리아 안지 자와 잠바다 제외 공고래서 하다 안지 진배 냠는 제고래 수름 쇠배 냠는 제고래서 하다 안디야 마 체면은 지 다음에 신이 등에 좀 고미하다 다음에 부터 비셔라고 냠는 제월 디스 냠는 제발 때네 탈벽과 토토 강아들에서 두그레 세지 어두신의 사이 송바들이야 이 배주지 냠는지 제자님아 디버체바도 노트쇼샤 디링당에 디네기 동아기 외봐야 하고 동아기 세기 탑람 땡해 여바대기 하고서 제자 디네자 뒤디리는 소능에 야 상이 또 그랬으면 이체 점로 제제 뒤디리는 소능에 될야 친친은 디네기 디바자오기니 맞아 디네마 네게위 냠래라 배주신 주기 세베 삼다지게 어주게들라 아 주게 직 냠보도 쉬고네 디바 띵유 doblatene 디바샤 삼다나 두체 오래서 나는 두순 거다.
To summarize then what we've looked at this evening. Firstly, in this meditation, as with most meditations, we are coming to know ourselves better and the situation that we are in. We're coming to really look at ourselves and our situation clearly, honestly, recognizing that our death will come. When and how, we have no idea, but it will come. And we have no power over our death. We cannot postpone it forever. We cannot ensure it does not come. And in fact, others cannot even help us in this, not our loved ones, no matter how much they care for us, nor how skilled medical professionals we employ, nor even if we call out to our Lama. We are under the control of our karma and afflictions. We have no freedom or independence. We are under the control, at the mercy of our karma and afflictions. So this we need to recognize well. And moreover, to recognize that if we do not use what remains of this life, what's past is past. But if we do not use well what remains of this life, then when death does come, we may well die with fear, but we almost certainly then would die with regret for not having fulfilled our potential. So if we look carefully at that, imagine that situation arising, imagine ourselves on our deathbed and ask ourselves, have I used this last period of my life well or not? Use this as impetus to purify past misdeeds and refrain from new misdeeds. In other words, to take care of your mind, not allow your mind to come under the influence of the afflictions, and if they arise, to not let them dominate. Then further, we've looked at that when we reflect well, we can have confidence that we can radically transform our situation. We can take our future lives into our hands because we have come under the care of the conquerors, of the Buddhas. And these are beings who have completely eradicated the afflictions together with their seeds and imprints and developed all excellent qualities perfectly. So hence they have qualities such as loving kindness, wisdom, enlightened activities and power, and therefore we can turn to them for protecting refuge sincerely, knowing that through their guidance we can transform our mind and thereby gain protection from suffering, freedom from suffering. And when one does sincerely go for refuge, one is going for refuge to what really encapsulates the Buddha, and that is the Buddha's teachings. And the fundamental teachings, or the very basis of the teachings, include ethical restraint, which is the abandonment of non-virtue done through our physical behavior, through our way of speaking, and even our mind. And as well as cultivating further virtuous qualities such as love and compassion. And if we also cultivate concentration and the wisdom understanding reality, these are the key additional causes to gain complete liberation from uncontrolled birth, complete liberation from all the sufferings in samsara. And we, all of us, have the capacity to develop like this. What is required is to develop these foundational understandings of our current predicament and the need to apply constant attention to our mind and to rely conscientiously on wholesome minds, turning away from unwholesome minds. Through reflecting like this, we come to the conclusion, the commitment, that we will use well whatever remains of this life, and we'll have confidence that we have the ability to do so, that radically transforming our mind is not beyond the capacity of any of us.
All right, that is
Then thank you. Thank you. We'll conclude there tonight.
Do you want to share it?
But there's a question.
Just a quick question. We were talking about the three causes of refuge, and you gave fear, faith, and what was the third?
The two causes.
Oh, only two. All right, that's good then.
Just that question?
That was all.
Okay, just to repeat it, Cameron asked to repeat the causes of refuge. That was fear and faith.